What's going on there, guys? My name is Matt, or Chewy, as most of you will know me as. The time is 11 PM UK local time for me on the 19th of May 2022, and the Fenix Airbus A380 has just released for Microsoft Flight Simulator. There have been lots of questions, queries, and issues so far with assigning correctly the Thrustmaster TCA Airbus throttle quadrant. And so I've been using this TCA throttle quadrant now for 10 months with this aircraft throughout the alpha and beta testing phase. And I'm going to show you all of my control bindings and how to correctly configure this piece of hardware to hopefully help some of the people who have been having issues. So I'm going to go through the throttle quadrant. I might also go through the joystick as well very quickly, but let's go into the menu and make sure we have all of our control options set up correctly. So if we scroll across, we'll make sure that we've got TCS engine and make sure that it's on 1 and 2, that it'll switch on the bottom left-hand corner here, not 3 and 4, obviously, because the A320 only has 2 engines. The first tab, you need instruments and systems. And then you've got fuel, which is set engine 2 fuel valve and set engine 1 fuel valve. These are assigned to joystick button 4, which is the engine number 2 starter switch here that you can see me now moving and toggling. And then set engine 1 fuel valve is joystick button 3, which is engine number 1. That then also goes into this menu here. So on the engine instruments tab of instruments and systems, you also have this toggle button assigned to set starter 1 and set engine master 1. It's also set starter 2 and set engine master 2 for the right hand side. You've also then got the engine starter switch, the white rotatory kind of knob here that you've got in the middle. So you can move it to ignition start, button number 8, and then norm, which is in the central position. And you've also got crank mode as well to the left there. Flight control services, we have flight control, we have rudder trim right, which is over here just above the parking brake. And so you move this to the right, and that is joystick button 19. Rudder trim to the left, which is by moving it to the left, and that's joystick button 18. And then there's a black button to the left of that, which is just to reset the rudder trim. From there, you have secondary control services, which is spoiler axis. And you also have the flap axis as well here. And that is assigned to joystick right axis Z and joystick left axis Z for spoilers and flaps. From there, we've got brakes. So you've got set parking brake, which is obviously the parking brake button or toggle switch in the bottom right-hand corner of the quadrant. And then you have all of the buttons for your auto brake. So auto brake, medium, low, high. This isn't actually in an Airbus A320, this bottom left-hand rotatory knob here, but you can still bind it if you want to. From there, we've got autopilot and we've got arm auto throttle, which are the 2 red buttons. Actually, I'm not too sure what joystick button 2 is, I'll be honest with you, but it should be the red button on the left-hand side there I've got for arm auto throttle. I never really use that. I believe, actually, the left-hand side will be for disengaging the auto throttle. Power management, we then have throttle, and we've got the... this is the thing that everybody seems to be getting confused with at the moment. So do not have this here where it says throttle to axis, and then in brackets, I believe it says 0 to 100%. That is an issue that people were having during alpha and beta testing, myself included, where it wasn't correctly calibrating the throttle quadrant, and it wasn't getting the right percentages. You need to make sure that this just reads throttle 2 axis and throttle 1 axis. I also have it reversed, as you can see. And then make sure that you've got the specific binding. So joystick left axis Y, I have for engine number 2. And then joystick left axis X for joystick number 1. When you're selecting these, make sure that you use the full range of motion. Okay, so move your throttles all the way forward. You can see that the white bar has disappeared because it's reversed. And then as I move it all the way back into max reverse there, it's back. The white bar is completely full. Okay, so there's lots of people who I'm worried aren't having this correctly set up in the controls menu, and that's where they are having issues. And you can see if I move it back to idle, it's around about 75%. From there, we've got the landing gear switch, which is simply gear up and gear down on the toggle switch there. So that's all of my key bindings on there. For the A320 joystick, I'm not going to go into the camera settings. I believe these are all default. You've got the flight control services, so the primary flight control services, obviously moving left and right for the elevator axis. Oh, sorry, the aileron axis, and up and down for the elevator axis. And they're bound to joystick left, axis Y, and axis X for elevator and ailerons. You do have controlled trimming services, but you don't trim an A320 because of fly-by-wire. And then I also have autopilot off, which is the red button, number 3, that you can see over. I'm showing you on the left-hand side of the screen. That is set to autopilot off. It's not autopilot toggle, I think is the other potential option that you can have in MSFS. It needs to be autopilot off. You can also do your toggle landing gear here on joystick button 8, but I don't really use any of these buttons in the bottom section, okay? So I have nothing bound on the slider for my joystick, all right? So once you've made sure that you've got all of those control bindings correctly set, what you need to do is you then need to go into the aircraft. You need to come down to the CDU, and we'll zoom in on the CDU here, the MCDU. We'll go to config. We'll go to controls config, and then you can see we've got the thrust lever calibration page. And you can see that with my current position where the thrust levers are in idle, they're reading at about 30 or so %. So what we need to do is we need to calibrate them. So we'll click calibrate, and it says set thrust levers to max reverse. I'm going to move my thrust levers all the way back, and you can see now we're reading 0%, and it's saying in detent here. Now that we're confident that it is in max reverse, we click next step, and it says set thrust levers to idle reverse. So I'm going to move them forward to about where I would like my idle reverse to be, and I'll just let them settle. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit of discrepancy between the percentages. There might be a little bit of difference between them on your actual hardware, but that looks about right. So I'll just let them settle, make sure that they're happy, and then we'll select next step. Now it says set thrust levers to idle, so I'll move them forward, again about 29%. They seem to be happy there. And we'll click next step again, move them to the climb detent, let them settle, and as you guessed, click next step, set thrust levers to flex/MCT, so we'll move them to that detent, and that's showing for me about 76%, ignore the ECAM warnings, and then finally the next step, set thrust levers to toga, which should read 100%, which they do. Next step, and we'll store the calibration, and that is it. And now if we go back up to the top of the aircraft, and if we go through all of these, there might be a little bit of playing that you need to do with your null zone. But if I move these all the way back, you can see we're in max reverse now. And as I slowly move the thrust levers forward, they'll go towards that idle reverse detent. Then we have idle. And then as I push them forward, we have climb, man flex, and finally toga at the top. Okay, so that's how I've got all of those set up. And again, you can change that null zone for the percentages if you want to. Now, to store the flap axis as well, what we need to do is we need to select to the right on the MCDU. So we'll select once to the right and then a second time to the right. And as you can see, we've got the flaps calibration page, and it will tell me flaps not calibrated. So we'll click calibrate. Set flaps to up. Well, my flap lever is already in the up position, so I don't need to change it. And it's reading hardware 0%. Next step. Set flaps to 1. So I'll move it to the number 1 detent, about 25%. Hit next step. Flap number 2. About 46% for me. Next step. Flap number 3. That's showing about 69 nice %. And then finally, set flaps full. 100%. Next step. And store your calibration. Let's check that it works. Of course, you can always go and recalibrate if you want to tune these. So we'll just move that back to the top. There's flap 1, flap 2, flap 3, and flap full. As I say, I have been using those key bindings and that calibration method now for 10 months since the very first stages of alpha testing with this aircraft. If you have any other issues with it and it's still not working and you definitely 100% followed my tutorial, you will probably need to open up a support ticket with Fenix, and I will leave the email address for that down in the description below. Hopefully that's helped some of you out though. I might do some more videos talking to you guys about the pedal disconnect and the rudder pedals and how to set those up as well, and maybe we can go into more details on the side stick and bits and bobs like that. But this was just a very quick video that I've hashed together in about 10 minutes or so, just to try and hopefully relax some nerves for people who are currently having some issues with the TCA and the Fenix. I really hope you enjoy the aircraft. Let me know in the comment section below if you'd like any more kind of footage like this with the Fenix. I'll do my best to help out where I can. Thanks so much for watching.